Welcome to this web chat in the Co-Housing and the Coronavirus series. We are delighted to have you with us. I'm Karen Gimnig, and I am the Communications Director for the Co-Housing Association of the United States. Karin Hoskin, our Executive Director, is also with us, waving the camera. And we're delighted, as always, to gather together as a community of communities from across the U.S. and often some from Canada, to sort of journey this uncharted water of what happens to co-housing and to community in time of a global pandemic. So welcome. Thanks everybody for being here. As always, we remind you that we offer this as a service free of charge, but it doesn't come actually for free. It costs real resources, including resources we have to pay for to make this happen. And if you can support this program with your donation, particularly a monthly Evergreen Neighbor donation, that allows us to keep doing what we do. So if you don't yet have an Evergreen Neighbor donation, this is a great time to make one. And you can do that at cohousing.org and the donate button that's in either the header or the footer. And if you already have an Evergreen Neighbor membership and would like to increase that Evergreen Neighbor monthly donation, we're always delighted to help you do that. So thank you very much for all of your support that has gotten us this far and allowed us to be here. Also want to note that we have an upcoming event. We're very excited about the Heart of Community, and you all know how Zoom works, so you will be familiar with the Zoom system that we use for these events. It will have 12 speakers for sessions, all about the ways that we connect and communicate and work with conflict and function well together as a community. And also a keynote with Mary Gaylord of Living Room Conversations. So if you can be with us May 30th, that would be fabulous. If you can't be with us May 30th, but you still want the information, still register, because you can watch the recordings after the fact. I usually get them up within about a week after the event that they become available. So I think that is all the start of the event announcements. Welcome everybody. I'm so glad you're here. This is the third time that we are really just checking in to hear from all of you. How is this COVID thing happening for you in community? And we've, had sessions in between of particular topics of interest, but what we really want to do tonight, as we have twice before at about monthly intervals, is to just stop and say, how's it going? What's working? What's not? What do you need? What's changed? One thing we know about this whole pandemic experience is that new things happen on a fairly regular basis and things shift. So what we want to do is really start today with an opportunity for a small group conversation. So we're going to put you in breakout rooms and really invite you to talk about how is coronavirus different today than it was a month ago when we checked in with all of you in terms of how it's playing out in community. We're curious about, we've heard that there have been, some conflicts around how a community might respond to coronavirus. And we're curious whether the shifting conversation in the broader culture with sort of more divergent viewpoints showing up has had any influence on what's showing up in your communities and how that's playing out. And just whatever is sort of real for you in this moment of being a community working through coronavirus. So that's the agenda for this evening. So you can just sort of check in and chat with each other. And I know some of the faces I know on this call are people who are not currently living in co-housing. So feel free to share kind of your thoughts or what it is for you to contemplate co-housing in this time and how that's all shifting. So welcoming all opinions. Everyone on this call is a member of the broader community, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. So off you go.
Here we go.
We're back. Karin loves that part. She sends us to breakout rooms just so that she can watch us all return because she thinks it's so fun.
It's like popcorn.
So what did you hear? What was significant? I'm not going to ask each group to report because we're not sort of looking for the repetition if there is any, but just to sort of gather, what are the thoughts that were shared that can be gathered with the group as a whole, shared amongst us all? I think we're a small enough group. You can probably just unmute and speak if you'd like.
Okay, this is Marty. We found some differences and some similarities. I noticed among the three of us, there was a couple of us who said people seem to be on edge more now. We talked about different ways that we've handled meals, and we just were getting into a discussion about how we're going to go back to having common meals. Another thing that we had a commonality in people shopping for each other and kind of taking care of each other. We had some differences in how much we used Zoom and how frequently we talk. So there were some good ideas and some things that were the same.
Cool, thanks, Marty. Who's heard other ideas, other reports, other experiences? Jenny, go ahead. Unmute, please. Jenny.
Okay. Marty, if you're talking about going back to common meals, can you tell us what kinds of things you're talking about doing in order to make that okay to happen?
Why don't I take that, since I was the one that brought up that subject in our group, as Rains from Berkeley Co-Housing. I was I've been away from my community, so it's been hard, but we're keeping up. But we had stopped before any of even our local shutdown, which was ahead of the state and ahead of most states, had already said, hey, it's too risky. Let's start at least had started doing meals served in ways that reduced risk, and then it was said, okay, it's just too risky overall. Too many vulnerable people here. Broke a tradition of 26 years of doing 3 meals a week consistently with up to 90% participation. And so I was comparing notes today with other neighbors, and for one who is extreme risk averse, it's like, oh, let's maybe something for next year to talk about. She was enjoying the not having to deal with all the tension around meals and the issues and the risk that it might involve. But for me, it was like, okay, we had made an agreement back in March that before any of the rules were in place, and it was supposed to last just until April. So we should at least consciously extend. But mostly it's about, okay, are there ways we could resume as small groups, as spread out seating, as serving in ways that reduce risk, that even just delivering meals to homes and dining outside as the weather improves. Just something to resume the social aspects. From others of these calls, other groups that have been doing virtual Zoom meeting meals, and there might be interest in that. But we're a smaller community of 15 homes in the core, and wanting to resume that tradition and feel like we have been missing the degree of connection and communication involves, and saying that there's got to be ways as it becomes legal to have group gatherings to do that.
Thanks, Rains. What you heard, what you said, what's happening for your community in this time?
Well, we talked about the difficulty of recruiting now. We're a forming community, and it's very difficult to find members now. I mean, we are active on social media, but we can't meet locally in libraries or
we can't recruit the way we were. We have to come up with a new paradigm for how to get people interested.
Yeah. And that's proven a little challenging. Since we are in the forming stage and we'll be designing a common house soon, one of our questions is, what can we do in the design of the common house to make it better suited for safety in the coronavirus era? I thought of, well, maybe we have a hand washing station near the door. Is that a good idea?
Yeah.
It would be easy to design into the house and difficult to add later. And you had some things, Jenny. What?
Well, just make the whole thing very easy to sterilize and kill germs. So all the surfaces be very substantial and easy to clean. And that's a design thing. You just start from the beginning. That wouldn't be too hard.
Yeah. Any other ideas?
Yeah,
in that?
we were curious if other people who have common houses look at their common house and say, well, if only we had just done this, then we could have common meals together. If anybody has ideas,
Yeah.
we'd love to hear those if you don't mind.
And in answer to your question, Rains, we are Sunnyside Co-Housing in Marysville, Washington. Okay. We have,
Any
go ahead.
Any feedback for Sunnyside about common house design? Either thoughts you've had or things about your common house that have worked well for you in this time? Karen or Karin? Now I'm doing it.
You're Karen, I'm Karin. I was just gonna say, we work so much together, it gets confusing in between us. So I live in Wild Sage Co-Housing in Boulder, Colorado. And one thing that we have been able to do, the way our common house is designed, is that our downstairs, which has an access door, that the first thing you come to is the USPS mailboxes and the cubbies.
Mhm.
And then also on that level are our guest rooms, which currently are closed. Our workout room, which gets used, but only by community members typically, and especially right now. And our laundry room, which is also only used by community members typically, and definitely right now. We do have a family room down there, but it makes it so that our downstairs, our common house currently is closed, meaning we're not, you have to be a community member to be in there, period. And that was just a way for us to kind of draw a boundary line for our minds. My mom, who is my mom, but she doesn't live here. If she came over here, which she's not right now, but if she were, she would not be allowed in the common house currently. But what having the upstairs, downstairs, like the gathering places, primarily our living room, kitchen, dining room on one level, have allowed us to have those still as gathering places. So there can be, periodically, there's about 4 or 5 of us that get together on the weekends to sew masks. And so we do that in our dining room. So there are a few people, they are only common house or only community members, but it allows the people that are more cautious, they just don't go in the upstairs.
Mm.
They literally just go in the downstairs to check their mail or do their laundry and come out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that's good.
Yes,
yes.
it's very
I didn't plan it
similar.
like that, but that's what it is. But anyway, so that might be something to keep in mind, that it would be like gathering spaces in one area, separated kind of by other spaces.
Mhm. Mhm.
Might be something to consider.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, our common house is very similar to that too.
Hmm.
That we just wish that we had put the mail room closer to the main front door so that the delivery people wouldn't have to walk through our dining room to
That's
get
a good one.
it.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
do allow it.
Yeah, we have a corridor, kind of an ante room, or a room where people can make deliveries before you go into
Oh, yes.
through a locked door. So all of our deliveries are out there.
Including standard USPS.
No, we have our one mailman who does have keys to the place. And so Will comes in and he does make mail deliveries. And we have a bathroom on that floor, which is only he is allowed to use it. So we've closed down for the duration. We've closed down almost all of our common spaces. We're not using the dining room. We're not using the living room. We're not using the downstairs playroom. We have a rule that in the laundry, only one person can be there at any one time. And at the end of the day, we run all the machines with a Clorox mixture. And we wipe down everything. As I said in our group, we wipe down all the common spaces and knobs and whatever's every 3 hours. So we have teams going through and wiping. So we've only had one household get the virus. One person being sick and another person in that household testing positive but not having symptoms. And that's been it in a community that's about 70 people. So we've been very, very careful. We don't allow any outsiders in. Only co-housers can come through our front door. Unless it's somebody like healthcare helpers and the kids caretakers come in. Otherwise, nobody from outside comes into our community during the period. So we're very careful.
Lauren?
I think one thing I would consider and I would do different is our 2 guest rooms are only accessible by going into our common house. And I wonder, I kind of feel like if they also had an outside access door, like I'm thinking about Mosaic has a guest room that I stayed in. Is that true? Maybe I'm making that up in my head. Okay, my point is if a guest room could have a true outside access as well as a common house access door, that would be great in this situation, because wouldn't it be fantastic if my mom who wanted to be closer to me, or a caretaker, somebody who's a caretaker but couldn't be in the house, or somebody who's displaced because everybody else in their house is, I don't know, I can think of a bunch of different situations, but that might be an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah.
Sharon, you stayed in ours.
I know, I was trying to, I was like, no, it's outside. And then I was thinking, it's not literally outside. I guess there was like a little hallway.
No, there was a separate entrance to where you stayed.
There was a separate. And it was a separate entrance. And wasn't there a little hallway and then the 2 guest rooms and then into the community?
No, the bathroom was in between the community room and the guest room.
Okay.
And that does, I mean, we aren't using the casita either. I mean, we haven't even talked about when can we ever do that again. But
that's too bad, because it is a sweet little space, I have to say.
So other thoughts? Other things sort of going on for communities? Did anyone have experiences with the sort of broader discussion going on in the outside world and that variety of opinions being spoken? Is that impacting conversations within your community at this point? We didn't know if that external political shift would be having internal impacts for co-housing.
We're all liberal.
Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I was kidding about that, but actually and we don't have to do that right now, but at some point I'd like to see what people are doing. We're going to try and do a Zoom meeting for the first time and wonder how other experiences have worked.
Yeah, lots of experience with that. I think many communities are doing that. And I think it was PDX Commons, which is an all senior community, by the way, had 100% participation in Zoom meetings, getting that to happen. And Jean, were you the one talking about having a screen in your common house?
Yes,
You want to
yes,
explain that,
Right.
how that worked?
right. Well, we have some tech savvy people here who were able to set up a screen. We also have a television. Well, it's not connected to, what is it, broadband or anything, but there's a large television screen in the living room. And the older people like that better because the chairs are more comfortable in the living room to sit in. So we can allow 3 people in the living room. And then we can allow, I think it's 6 people in the dining room. So they're both hooked up to computers. And so they're streamed that way onto the screen or the television, whichever screen is being used. And then there's a microphone in the dining room. And I guess speakers somehow, I'm not sure how the living room one works, but both of them are pretty good with the audio.
So that the idea is that folks who aren't comfortable running Zoom for themselves, that
Right.
those few people can remain physically distant, spreading themselves out in a
Right.
common area and participate in a Zoom meeting with someone else managing the tech for them.
Yes. Mhm.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
The rest of us are home in our apartments. And
We had one Zoom meeting, and we're going to have our second one on Sunday. And I would say to you, the group that's just starting, it really helps to have someone who knows how to manage the Zoom, who knows how to do the physical part of it. Really helped. Luckily, we have a man in our community who does that all the time. So he can handle the physical part of it. And it's very different. We've learned in the month since we did it. I think we have some better ideas of ways of engaging people by using things like the reactions and using things like a whiteboard you can write on and breakout rooms. As we're learning those things, I think it's going to make the meeting go a little easier, because first time we did it, we just did round robins for everything. And but it is a change, and particularly for the facilitator, you can't really read the energy of the people, or you can't really see the clues that we get when we're in a circle all in the same room.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yep. You might also take a look at the past 2 weeks web chats were focused on things to do with Zoom
good.
meetings, ways to use the tips and tricks of the technology. So there's a good bit of data there in Zoom recordings.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, thanks.
At the past web chat. So yeah, lots of information. Essentially, I've been hearing, overall really positive. People are feeling pretty good about it. In fact, I'm kind of curious how many Zoom meetings will happen after the pandemic is long gone and forgotten. So lots of groups having good success with that. I should mention that Zoom is not the only technology that does this. There are many other platforms that are also options, and we are not intending to be a Zoom commercial.
Right. I did a Zoom training in anticipation of this meeting coming up, but it was very basic, and I think I need to probably brush up a little more on things, as you suggested, like reactions and whiteboards. So I'll work on that.
Yeah, the other thing that we found with the association online events is having a practice time when you're not trying to get business done, but just let everybody know, we're going to set up this meeting, drop in and try out your controls, see if your microphone works, all that kind of stuff can both make the meeting go more smoothly and increase confidence so that people are less anxious when they arrive at the meeting, which I don't know about your community, but having people be less anxious as they arrive at any community meeting seems like a good idea.
I'm pretty sure that everybody here is familiar with Zoom in our community because we're small. And I think, what do you think, Marianne? Has everyone here used Zoom?
I'm not so sure about that. There might be a few. Of course, I don't know how we get Rebecca in from into. Oh, well, she's coming to the meeting, so I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I think there's a little variation in tech savvy, so we probably practice is a good idea.
Okay, we should talk about it.
Yeah.
Mimsy, you've been waiting for a while.
I just thought of something that is just really positive, that has made some interesting connections in our community. It's very early, I mean, right on. We set up a volunteer buddy system. And the people that I chose are people that I really didn't know. And it has been absolutely delightful to get to know these other people. And I'm very appreciative. I think our buddy system has kind of evolved in some people's mind that if somebody got sick, the degree of help that the buddy could help with, and to advocate within the community for help. So that, but just that, to me, that basic night chat with somebody and how was your day at work? I mean, I have learned, I had no idea what one of our members, her work. I knew she worked in native work, but I had no idea, and she was an engineer, but I've learned so much, and it's been absolutely delightful. It has brought me closer to the community.
Lovely to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
So Karen, I think you had something.
Yeah. Well, I'll share a positive thing and then a not as positive thing. So, Mimsy, we did we did something similar to, well, we did pods. And so there's a collective of 3 or 4 people, and we have somebody who's a techie geek and did some like randomly, what's that called? Randomized, blah, blah, blah. Put people in pods, did some computer program, and it was great. So that people in the same household weren't in the same pod. And I too got to know somebody that I didn't really know. Like, I had met him a couple of times. He happens to be a housemate and a renter. So it was really nice to get to know this person. And so I'm excited. We're about to get our second pod assignments. So that's a good thing. Something that came up a few weeks ago that kind of bums me out, to be honest, is that there's somebody in one of our households sent out an email saying one of the people in our household has mild symptoms and is tested positive. And so we are all quarantining, but we have decided as a household to not announce who specifically it was in the household to prevent, I don't know, I can't remember the word, but it was like judgment. And it was like, and it made me sad because I thought, really? Like, would that be somebody's reaction, is to like shun that person because they were like marked with the scarlet letter C or something? It just made me really sad. I understand why. I mean, when I talked about it with my husband, I'm like, what, really? Like, wouldn't we tell people who has it? Just could, that seems like the responsible thing to do. And he's like, I don't know, like people are on edge, and they can act not nicely, and they are doing responsibly what they should do. And I agree with him, I guess, but it just made me sad.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel very community to me. That not that they didn't do that, but that they felt like they couldn't. That's what made me sad.
Imagine how the patient feels.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy that they're all out of quarantine now. They've done their done their time.
Good.
But yeah, strange times.
Yeah.
Very strange. So, more thoughts about things that are going well in your communities. How are you supporting each other? Things that are continuing, new things that have arrived. Any new ideas that perhaps haven't been shared here before of community gathering, support, kindnesses? We always love stories in co-housing.
This is Neil. I think this has been mentioned before, happening in the outside world, but neighbors at Swan are, often for years a lot of us have been saying, the glue is the meals.
Yeah.
So we don't have that anymore. But the new glue that showed up a few weeks ago was suddenly a flurry of internal emails and decision making about what song is going to be sung at 7 p.m. each and every day. And so we have a calendar, and we all can access the calendar, and basically you go into the calendar and you post the name of the song, and at 7 p.m. Some of you know Swans Market Co-housing. We're a kind of a row of 10 homes on either side of a long city block length, about 20 feet apart. And come 7 o'clock, people who are home and who want to partake will step out with their lyric sheet or their phones or whatever, and we'll start in tune and out of tune singing the day of the song. So anyway, that's one thing that has been going on over there.
That sounds way more civil than our 8 o'clock howling.
Right. Well, yes, there's also howling in other parts of Oakland where I've been at 8 p.m. The other thing that I mentioned that I did not mention in our small group, that kind of, we're on 0.3 of an acre with close to 30 humans there. And one of the things that came up was that coming up and down the staircase was too narrow a place for 2 or 3 or more individuals as they're coming home from their cars or from the mailboxes and walking up onto the walkway into their homes. And so there was just a whole conversation about, what kind of protocol could be adopted. So anyway, some people were way more open than others to kind of resolving that. I don't think there's anything that's been, written about and agreed to around that. But the other thing that the kids were kind of involved in during a work day, and there are still doing work days with all the protocols, is that we actually used a blue masking tape to create corridors of spaces with the 6-foot distancing. And so that just made it a little bit more playful for folks to, playful, and also easier for folks who possibly were tempted by forgetting, we all have done that, that there's little avenues that you need to, lanes that you need to stay in. So I thought that was pretty cute as well. And then those are the 2 things that I scribbled down earlier that I wanted to share.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
I think one thing that is being absolutely proven and probably wouldn't have surprised any of us is that co-housing is absolutely inclusive of creativity. And you get a group of folks together and problems get solved and art happens and performance happens. And I think we're seeing that every bit as much in times of pandemic as we do in normal times or celebratory times in communities.
We've got a neighbor who's a youth fitness instructor, and so she's organized parkour out on the lawn, and that's sometimes become dancing or other kinds of activities around at distance.
Nice.
Right.
Love that.
We've got someone in Albuquerque, not in our co-housing community, but 7 o'clock every night, the bagpipes start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we're sort of winding down, so I'm going to let us head that way a couple of minutes early. We're nearing the end of our hour. But I just want to thank everybody for coming and sharing. Yeah. I think we're proving at a national scale that community matters and that being together in this is possible and in coronavirus times. And it's been a particular pleasure for Karin and I to have sort of this consistent week-to-week connection with many of you through this coronavirus time. I want to point you to next week. It's a great week to bring everybody you know on board. It is the currently, as we've said, things change all the time, but currently we are anticipating that next week will be the last of the weekly co-housing and coronavirus web chats. We're going to look toward what happens in that possibly far off day when we can think about life after coronavirus. So what does the transition look like? What will we keep? What have we learned that we want to hold on to? And in what ways will life be different forevermore? And then what are the steps that we take to get back to some version of normal? What does that, if we want to return to things, how does that happen? So same time, same contact information next week for that. And we hope to have a big crowd to have that conversation. We're really counting on all of you to kind of fuel the creativity of that, either with conversations that your communities have already had, or we'll just be one big brainstorming session and begin to fuel those conversations for people. But that's next week. Remind you again that donations are always most appreciated at cohousing.org. That is what keeps us going from week to week and month to month, that we can offer both these kinds of sessions and the infrastructure that lets us tell you about them. So all of that is really important. And if you haven't already signed up for Heart of Community online conference on May 30th, early bird pricing is in play. And if you are a member of a community, which most of you are, we are offering a community discount rate, so that for $250, which is the price of just 5 people attending at the early bird rate, your entire community can attend. So we really recommend that. This is going to be all about how communities can be connected, can be in communication, can have stronger conflict management or be more productive conflict, work with consensus well, and we just think any community would benefit. So whether you can pull money from your HOA budget or just, you know what co-housers do when they want something that's not in the budget is they pass the hat and they get that amount knowing that it's going to be good for the community and we don't have to keep score about who contributes all the time. So
Karen,
if you can do that, the thing to do is to email Karen and let her know that you would like to purchase a community coupon code, which will allow everyone to participate.
I have a question about that.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Marty.
If we buy that group rate for the entire community, do people all have to be together, or can they all join from their houses?
What you're buying is a coupon code that members of your community can use to register, just like they were registering all by themselves.
Oh, okay.
So it's everybody registers, and it's just that you give your community the coupon code that you have purchased that lets them register for free. And it gives them access to the recordings as well. So if community members are saying, we can't show up that day, that's okay. The recordings will be available. And, one of the things that I know some communities are doing with the web chats, and I think potentially can also do with the conference sessions, is as a community say, so here's a topic that interests us, let's all watch the recording and then have a conversation about it. We can get together on Zoom or whatever and have that follow up. And by buying that community coupon, that makes it really easy then to invite your whole community. And for forming communities where people are going to join later, that code is valid for anyone who, if somebody joins your community on June 1st and you're like, darn, you just missed it. You can give them that code and still get all of the access and get them up to speed. So we think it's a great deal. And really look forward to seeing, one of the great things about online is there's no limit to the numbers that can participate. So we just would love to see, hundreds from across the country coming, and we're perfectly able to accommodate that. So spread the word.
Thank you.
All right.
I also just want to remind everybody that whether attending using a group coupon code or not, we actually do encourage each individual to register, because during the conference, it's an online conference, but it's structured the same as live, meaning from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., you actually have 3 choices to attend, of sessions to attend. So I would go to this session, and one of my community member neighbors would go to a different session. And so we actually do encourage that people register, however it is they're registering individually, to be able to get that. And though they are recorded and you could go back and watch the others, there is that interaction. So it's always better live, even if it's virtual live.
Yep.
I've got an image that hopefully can close us out. I think some people may have seen the Syracuse cultural workers work before, but here's their update for pandemic times.
Hey, love them. Very
Oh,
good.
isn't that great?
Oh, that's good.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh, nice.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yeah.
Syracuse cultural workers has it available.
I was going to say, can you put that link into the
I'll if I can read it. Yes, SyracuseCultureWorkers.com. We'll do it.
That's great.
What a great way to close us out. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Back next week. We'll see you then.
Okay, bye.
Thank you all.
Night, everyone.